are you doing? And please give us an introduction for yourself, and the floor is yours.
Howdy, 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 howdy. For everyone tuning in, welcome, friends and family, and all folks tuning in from across the world. Because yes, BIMS is international. Uh, Happy Earth Day. I've got my Earth pal with me today. It was a gift from my sister at one of her very first jobs. Shout out to my sister Samantha Tanksley. She's 17 going on 70. Got a really amazing old soul. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be here with you all celebrating Earth Day, offering reflections. What an incredible event this has been. I have the privilege of working hybrid, and so I was able to tune into earlier discussions and sessions across hours while I was doing work. So I had it in the background, and I've just heard some really powerful moments and pieces, but really, really happy to be here. So thanks so much for inviting me here. And it looks like I've got the green light to go ahead. And so I definitely will make sure to take up the hour that I've been allotted. So much on my mind, but also I want to make sure that I remain focused with the message. And so when I had the opportunity to think of, what can I share within my hour? Certainly it could have been about the data, could have been about the science, as I love that very much in my background. But I know in moments like what we're all experiencing across the world, certainly within the US. What really gets us across the finish line is connecting with each other in moments of uncertainty, in moments of frustration and great injustice under the pressures of fascism. Holding strong to each other gets us across the finish line. And so consider myself a friend, a colleague, a peer, get to know me a little bit more and why the invitation for me to be present was offered. And so allow me to start from the beginning. This conversation, this hour I'll spend with you is what I had dreamed up entitled Salt, Soil, and Story, Black Waters and Black Futures. So howdy, folks. My name is Armon Alex. You pronounce my name like my arm is on. And I was raised in Corpus Christi, Texas, right on the shores of the Gulf of Mexico. Yep, you heard me right, the Gulf of Mexico. I don't need to go any further than that. But today I wanted to, speak not only as, a scientist in my background, but as someone, shaped by salt air and also unfortunately by oil refineries in my backyard, by barbecue cookouts and many of my black elders, by shoreline sunsets and the long shadow of environmental injustices as well. And I come from a place that's both beautiful and unfortunately burdened. And it's also a place that taught me how to listen to water, how to resist erasure, and how to protect what protects us. And because of my education, my soul, and my determination, I'm very blessed at the age of 25 to wear many hats. Um, I'm here as the environmental and climate justice chair of the H. Boyd Hall branch of the NAACP right here in Corpus Christi, Texas. I'm here as the head of development and outreach for an amazing nonprofit, Heirs to Our Ocean, and pride and joy as a co-founder alongside Maggie Peacock of the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit, or GOMIX for short. And that summit space, GOMIX, is a place where young people from coastal communities just like mine across the Gulf of Mexico, tri-nations, including not just the US, but Mexico and Cuba and islands, where youth in those communities can come together to lead, organize, and work towards justice for their communities and our Gulf. But honestly, but before all of that, before the titles, before the research, before the organizing, I was just a kid standing knee deep in the surf, staring out at the horizon, curious, wondering what lived beneath the waves, and also in moments why some people had power to pollute it or to poison it. I saw that firsthand as a kid. So this hour is for that kid. It's for the people of the Gulf fighting for breath. It's for the youth building power in sometimes often forgotten zip codes. And hopefully for you, for anyone who believes that protecting our families, protecting our communities, and our ocean must start with connecting with each other. So before we dive in, I wanted to ground us with the words of a poet who deeply understood what it means to survive, to create, and to carry forward what others tried to erase. Anybody know Lucille Clifton? An amazing Black American poet. She was an educator. She was a former poet laureate of Maryland, whose work centered on, oh my gosh, so much Black in identity, womanhood, family, resilience. And she wrote sharp simplicity, but also that had such profound strength, often using very few words, excuse me, to tell very enormous truths. And oftentimes when I read her work or her poetry, it reminds me that even when the world, and especially very relevant to these days, tries to silence us, we are still here. I'm speaking today, you're listening now. And when we've been given no blueprint for justice, it seems like sometimes we still find ways to build it. And even when the ocean feels too wide to cross, we still wade in it together. So I wanted to open with her words, not just as inspiration, because let's be real, Miss Clifton was definitely inspiring folks, but also as an invitation to this moment, this hour that we will spend together. And it's from a piece of her work called Roots. She said something along the lines, call it our craziness, even call it anything. It is the life thing in us that will not let us die. Oh, I mean, I thought that piece spoke and speaks to intergenerational resistance. You know, we've got some stuff in there around maybe serving as a rally cry, um, maybe as a bridge into stories about Hillcrest, a community here in my hometown, a historically Black community that I'll share some stories and a piece about, some more information about frontline communities or even just youth leadership. And this hour is for those who have been made to feel as if their voices didn't belong in science, for those who, protect others even when others may not protect them back, and for those who are eager to turn the tide. So this section I call the Gulf is a front line. For those of you who don't know, the Gulf of Mexico is more than a coastline and more than just shrimp boats out of Louisiana. It's home. Oh my goodness, is it home? And it's full of culture, but also it's under a lot of pressure right now. It is a massive place where salt air meets the scent of mesquite and also refineries, where families gather for Sunday cookouts just downwind from those smokestacks. It's where generations have fished, where we've worshiped, where we've danced, and lived with a love for the water that goes deeper than the maps could even possibly measure. Unfortunately, folks, the Gulf is under siege. not just from, of course, the impacts of the climate crisis, hurricanes and sea level rise, because yes, those are all very real, but from human made decisions that treat our communities like afterthoughts. Industrial encroachment, pollution, lots and lots of environmental racism that have made this coast a sacrifice zone. And the fight for the Gulf isn't just ecological, it's also cultural, it's historical. And for many of us that call this place home, it is deeply personal. So, all right, let's zoom in. Corpus Christi, for example, here, my hometown, population somewhere 300, 400 odd thousand people. And we're seeing the next chapter of the results of environmental racism unfold in real time. So here at home in Corpus Christi, there's a desalination plant for folks that aren't familiar with what desalination plants are, taking in ocean water, taking in salt water, turning it into fresh water. So the city of Corpus Christi and the port of Corpus Christi say, hey, we need water. We're in the middle of a drought. And you would think, oh, this is sound idea, right? It brings water into communities. And so, yeah, that's your first impression. But when you dig deeper, come to find out that that water is not just for the people of Corpus Christi. Unfortunately, those same industries in the port of Corpus Christi who claim to be benefiting our communities through their pollution, unfortunately, um, that water's for them. When you dig a little deeper, you'll soon find out that 80% of that water to be built from a desalination plant is slated for them, not the people of Corpus Christi. There is an injustice. So not only do you have to deal with the byproduct, which is a hypersaline brine, and you can either burn it, which creates toxic air, or you can release it back into the waters, which is, if you can imagine, not so great for our marine ecosystems when you have such highly concentrated, and we're talking about millions of gallons a day into a nearly closed bay system. Not so great. But what is the true cherry on top of that all? They want to build that desalination plant in the historic Hillcrest neighborhood, a Black community that is already burdened by decades, as we've seen through across the Gulf of Mexico, but we're really focusing here on Corpus, by decades of environmental injustice. That site was originally designated where they want to build this desalination plant as a buffer zone. As a buffer zone, and that's where they want to build the plant, in a buffer zone to protect Hillcrest residents from pollution. And now it's being retargeted, specifically in the space of that pollution place. Imagine we're diving, going lower, lower in the water column in the bay. We reach the benthic zone, the sea floor, and it is suddenly flooded with hypersaline brine, highly concentrated salt. All of those organisms that once lived here, settled here, marine worms, what else, folks? Crustaceans, mollusks, just to name a few, all pushed out. And that particular zone becomes dead, unlivable. It's the same with people. Environmental racism operates like brine. It makes places toxic and then calls them disposable. I can recall a day when I was maybe about, oh gosh, 8, maybe 7, and my father and amazing, amazing man, we were out near Corpus Christi Bay. We were fishing along the sea wall. My father was this tall, towering presence, well over 6 feet. He also had the gentlest soul you could imagine. My mom would call him a friendly giant, as a matter of fact, or many people too. He had a nickname. They'd call him Batman. He loved the DC universe. They call him Batman, and sometimes they call me Batman Jr., but no one's called me that for a while. You can just call me Armon. Anyway, so he had a way of being fully present without ever saying too much. He was what I, see and reflect now as a man who had intuition. He had such a inviting presence, warmth, um, and always had a great way of being incredibly observational too. My father was Black. He was a Navy veteran, stationed in Corpus Christi when he met my mother. Actually, my mother's a Mexican American woman with roots I would say are deeper than mesquite trees. She probably got that from my grandmother. Anyways, together they had me. They built a life in which I am bearing, a life that was braided in love, I would say, in culture and faith in everything that we did. But anyways, that particular day that I'm recalling about my father when I was about 7 or 8, that day, the sun was bright overhead. Oh, gosh, definitely needed some sunscreen, but we weren't wearing it. And the water shimmered. Of course, this is Corpus Christi we're talking about, not the Florida Keys. So that water was about green tinted glass. But it still looked beautiful at first glance. But I do remember, even in this memory, across many others, that the water was still. It was too silent almost even, no splashes, quiet, no bait fish skipping across the surface. And quite frankly, even like the seagulls that we get here weren't diving like they usually did. Um, and and then I remember getting just like what felt like a slap right in the face. I noticed the smell. And it wasn't your usual like briny, fishy scent I'd come to associate with that space, but this one was different. It was sharper, it it was heavier, and I knew it was wrong. The air smelled quite frankly like metal, like gas, a warning, unspoken, floating in the breeze across our noses. And there we were, small fish right before me, fish floating belly up along the shoreline, like they had simply given up. My father in that moment, I don't recall him saying anything at first. He just looked, and then, watching me try to make sense of what I was seeing, he did offer something. He did say something eventually, that, at the time didn't really grasp, but thank goodness for my memory. He said something along the lines of like, people can be very smart, Armon, hold lots of power, but sometimes they do dumb things and yield that power at the sacrifice of others. Fish need clean water, and without it, they float to our feet. Well, anyways, we kept on fishing because that's what dad brought us there to do. But the reason why I brought this up was because something in me at that time did shift. I realized that the water that I had loved could also be poisoned without warning by people I didn't even know. That harm didn't always come with a storm or a siren or a notification. Sometimes it came quietly, unannounced. And the people most affected weren't the ones in suits making all the decisions, making all the money, that they were people like my father and I. They were people like me, the kids just holding rods, right? Down by the Corpus Christi seawall, along that seawall. Sometimes it looks like fathers who have strong backs, great humor, but maybe softer voices. And the people being most affected are the families who lived close enough to smell the shifts in the air week to week. I really do think that a moment like that, like many others, um, became a seed, one that would grow into a calling, because upon reflection now, science, real science, isn't just about study, it's about observation and sharing and truth telling. about witnessing just like my father did that day and choosing to speak to be heard. And so this next section, I wanted to share something that I'm reading at the moment. I'm currently reading an amazing book by Angela Davis. I've got it here with me. Freedom is a Constant Struggle, Ferguson, Palestine, and the Foundations of a Movement. And this book also included a foreword by Dr. Cornel West. Anyways, the reason I got this book in my hands, or how I got this book in my hands, I had mentioned that the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit was co-founded alongside Maggie Peacock. And I remember the first time I had heard about this book was at my time at university. Read excerpts, never the full thing. I remember Maggie had shared it again. She was like, this book was amazing. Angela Davis is incredible, timeless. And so just recently, I had an opportunity to go to Houston for a big protest and march against fossil fuels in Houston. And during one of the community events, there was a table there, had all these books, and I had just walked past it. I'm which was unusual of me, but for some reason I had just walked right past it, and I heard like a shout. I turned around, I saw Maggie put like money in one of the donation boxes and grabbed a book because apparently at that table, all those books, anyone could have whatever donation you had that day. As long as you donated, you could grab a book. And I saw her running over with the red book, and she's like, "This is it. This is your opportunity to read it." Anyway, so right now I'm reading this book with some close friends. We developed a reading circle. And one of the excerpts that Angela Davis offers in there, try not to butcher it, but she said something about freedom is not a single act. It is the work of collective struggle and deep remembering. And remembering sometimes is radical, and it's necessary, because when we forget, when we erase the stories of frontline communities like here in Corpus Christi in the Hillcrest neighborhood, we don't just erase that past, but we erase the evidence of harm and how it got there. We erase those patterns. We erase the data that shows how and who was sacrificed. And when we do that, we erase our right to demand something better. But when we speak those stories, when we remember those memories, um, like we've seen folks do today, we reclaim something that I find really powerful. We reclaim our right to be heard and to also grieve and to organize. And honestly, we reclaim our ability to act. And, when I read pieces from Angela, especially in this book, I see that storytelling is one of the oldest tools, whether from Black history or my Indigenous roots, it is one of the oldest tools of survival that we have for many Black and Brown communities, especially. Memory, isn't just nostalgic; it's strategic. It helps us draw the vast map of injustice. It helps us trace the pipelines from pollution to policy, and it helps us ask the hard questions like, who was left behind? Who profits? And how do we rewrite the ending of our stories? And when I think about the day on the pier with my father in Corpus Christi, smelling the fuel in that air, watching the fish float lifeless, um, I realize now that that memory is kind of data. That silence was a, a form of violence, but speaking about it now, that's resistance in moments like these. And we turn our pain into data, we turn our memory into policy, and we turn silence into resistance. This is why I do the hard work: studying, researching, sharing, and yes, organizing. Not just to study the ocean, but to fight for the people who live, whose whose lives are entangled in its currents, because freedom, and I would say real freedom, requires us to remember what they want us to forget. This next section I entitled Resistance is Inherited. I like to say that environmental justice is in my blood. Because quite frankly, it's in the stories passed down over my kitchen tables, and maybe it might be the same for you. It's in the hands that worked the soil like my grandmother and folded the laundry. It's in in my abuela's voice, steady, quiet, often unshakable. My grandmother on my mom's side, mi abuela, she actually immigrated here to the United States from Mexico, from Matamoros in the 1960s or so. And like many who crossed the border in search of many things, dignity, she didn't come with much except for an incredible amount of determination. She came here seeking a life where her children, my mother and my mother's siblings, could have more than she had, more than what was offered to people who looked like us, spoke like us, or worshiped like us. And she worked hard, y'all. If anyone asks me who's the strongest woman you know, it's my grandmother, hands down, 70 plus, and she's still out there moving. She is grooving. And she often worked long hours, often in jobs that left her body, quite frankly, aching and her spirit exhausted, but she still showed up. She showed up for her family. She showed up for her community. She showed up for her future, which included myself and my cousins and my nephew. She never called herself an activist, but she taught me about resistance in the way she made do, the way that she sometimes rationed water, and the way that she and the way that she reused plastic containers before zero waste was a trend, and the way that she prayed over her mills or her garden or her house and reminded us that the land also remembers. I remember once, maybe I was 8 or so, definitely younger than 10. We were outside pulling some weeds from her yard in the middle of this Texas summer heat, y'all. I don't know why she had us out there. But, anyways, I complained like any kid would, quite frankly. Told her that the sun was just too hot. Well, too hot. And she looked upon me, not unkindly though. And she said something along the lines like, Mijo, the sun is not your enemy, but it does not care if you are unprepared. And I didn't understand it then, but I do now. I do now know that what she was teaching me was a piece of survival, working with the land and not against it, how to respect the many powers and immense power of nature, and also um, how to prepare for the systems, whether that's political, environmental, or economic, that don't care whether we survive at all. She may not have had the words for environmental justice, but I saw her live it. Uh, and I'm speaking about her like in past tense. She's still here today, as a matter of fact. Love my grandmother. And one thing that I know for certain is that she did not need the data sets to know that our neighborhoods were getting hotter. She felt it, and she would talk about it, and she still does. That our streets were getting less greener, and that our water felt less safe. She knew because she felt it in her bones. Because her children coughed through it, I coughed through it because she had to choose between sometimes paying a light bill or replacing some filter for the AC. And that kind of wisdom that lived generationally is too often left out of environmental conversations. Too often we see science trying to reinvent what abuelas, grandmothers, nanas already knew, grannies already knew, that land also is memory, that pollution can be written into policy, and that justice does not trickle down. It's something that we have to fight for together. For folks that know him, Dr. Robert Bullard, amazing guy. We both wear vests. I'm not wearing one today, but if you usually see me out there in the field, or if you see me in presentation, I'm usually given a vest. But I'm wearing my jellyfish, my shirt today. It's my favorite. Jellyfish are one of my favorite things. But Dr. Robert Bullard, the father of environmental justice, he says that environmental justice is a civil rights issue of the 21st century. And I know it is because we're experiencing it here in the Gulf. And I believe that. And I believe it with everything in me. And I also believe this, that our science must meet this moment. And folks, it's not just in our labs, or it's not just on our charts, but it's in how we listen and who we center and what we choose to protect and study. Because resistance is inherited. And if we are lucky, it is also shared. Abuela, my grandmother, planted seeds in me that I'm still learning how to water. But I am privileged enough now to be able to pass those on as well. So this next section I entitled A Letter to the Ocean. Now, if you were like me, I was tuning in the background while I was doing some work. And so if you are able, I'd like for you to take about 3 minutes with me really quickly. Go on and grab a pen, grab a pencil, something to write with, grab a post-it, a napkin. I've got my notebook here, or pull out your phone. We've got notes on phones nowadays, but something to capture your thoughts somehow, some way. And I'd like for you to spend, maybe just a moment of your time briefly thinking about if you could write a letter to our ocean, writing a letter to our world's waters. What would you include to that letter? What would you include in that letter? And I'll take a moment to do the same. Although, full transparency, I was able to get a head start on this assignment because I'm the one that created it. But if you could write a letter to the ocean, go ahead and start writing that down. What are you thinking about? What are you feeling? What are your thoughts, your grievances, but maybe your celebrations, the joy? Take just a quick moment, jot some ideas down. What would a letter to our ocean-based planet, to our watersheds look like? And if you're watching this in the future and you have the ability to pause, go ahead and hit pause and take some time to write. I was able to put something together. For my letter to our ocean, it was two parts. Let me see if I can grab that real quick. I wrote two parts. Because if you're like me, sometimes I go above and beyond. So I'm going to share with you the two that I wrote. The first one, I said, Dear Gulf, you've held the bones of my ancestors and the toxins of my enemies. You are both wound and healer. I write not to fix you, but to witness you. I speak your name so others won't forget what lies beneath the surface. You fed my people and carried our pain. Today, I promise to carry you back. I love poetry. I absolutely love poetry. And I love poetry from voices often that are often undergoing systems of oppression. Whether it's on my father's side, on my mother's side, my ancestors speak loud through me. The other letter to our ocean I had put together read, Gulf of Mexico, you are a contradiction of abundance and abandonment. They extract from you and ignore your cries, but we haven't forgotten you. We dive into you with our stories, with our science, with our songs, and we're coming, not just to save you, but to stand beside you as kin. I I also really love that. I'm probably going to print that out and put it on the wall somewhere. But thanks for taking some time to join me in writing a letter to the ocean. Those were just two of the ones that I wanted to share with you all that I took some time for. But if you can today on this Earth Day, write what if you're therapeutic. I find that to be the case. And as we're getting closer to the end of my wonderful hour, just a quick thank you for tuning in and supporting a wonderful opportunity like this across science, giving us an opportunity to share the work that we've done. And one of the pieces of work that I had shared at the very beginning that is my pride and joy is this next section called the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit, Youth Rising. And Maggie Peacock during COVID, but sometime in one evening while I was at university, we were both ranting about how inaccessible, how how just not inclusive academics were across the Gulf of Mexico as it relates to Gulf of Mexico science. And it was through that ranting that we had really solidified that youth, especially women, especially people of color, and youth, young experts across fields of academics to policy to organizing to education to advocacy across the Gulf of Mexico were being left out of critical conversation. And so through this space of grievance and frustration in the middle of the pandemic, we had created on FaceTime the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit, and to build something that we never had uh, historically, a space for youth from the coastal communities, including Mexico and Cuba, to learn and to organize and co-lead. And might I share that from Louisiana to Florida, young people are speaking truth to power in real time, y'all. I can't explain how powerful we're seeing youth across the Gulf step up. We are pushing for equitable science education, for climate data access, and youth-led restoration. And I think one of the most powerful moments in my work and involvement helping direct the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit came last year when I had I, I had a dream. Thank you, I'm okay. I had a dream about creating some sort of opportunity to recognize the incredible work that young people are actually doing, even in my hometown of Corpus Christi, but across the Gulf. And so we put together an award ceremony last year. But it wasn't just, any awards. These weren't trophies that were, we just wanted to sit on the shelf. I also know that that was a moment of remembrance and resistance. And here's why. We created 4 awards, each named after someone who had shaped our movements across the Gulf and in the Corpus Christi area, some ancestors, maybe that we had never met, but also the 3 of 4 of them were loved ones who had the honor to walk, who we had the honor to walk alongside in our lifetimes and just recently passed away within the last 3 years. So I'd mentioned there's 4 awards. There was the Reverend Adam Carrington Award for Environmental Justice, an incredible man from Hillcrest here in Corpus Christi fighting against pollution in our community and his neighborhood, and stood firm against the encroachment of fossil fuel pollution. The other award was the Jennifer Hilliard Award for Community Action. that was deeply personal. I knew Jennifer as a force and a fierce environmental advocate from Ingleside on the Bay, just across the Corpus Christi Bay from Corpus Christi. And she always showed up for her people, for her community. She was joyful, she was grounded, she was organized, and she organized coastal communities across the Gulf. And she too did suddenly pass away, definitely too soon. And giving that award wasn't just about honoring someone's memory, it was about passing the baton. And so those were just two of the four. There was another one, John Weber Award for Sustainable Future. John is still living. John Weber is an incredible individual from Corpus Christi that is just a nut about sustainability rooted in indigenous practices. And then that last one, the award that we gave out last year, was an award around uh, in indigenous sovereignty. That one was especially important because what we've seen so often is that indigenous youth are fighting for land, they're fighting for language and life in ways that aren't always visible to mainstream climate spaces. Anyways, nonetheless, this was a very powerful moment in which I had a real opportunity to continue sharing the stories of folks and their legacies. That moment, um, honestly, the night of the ceremony, the day right before the actual summit last year, um, when I and the rest of the youth from the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit had the opportunity to call out those names of those individuals, to share their stories, and handed those awards to the next generation of youth leaders from across the Gulf. It was so sacred. Getting a little emotional thinking about it, to be quite honest. We weren't just passing on a plaque. We were carrying stories. We were continuing their legacies, and we were bridging the wisdom of elders to the fire of my colleagues, my peers, youth. And for me, it was a reminder that movements aren't built on single moments. They're built on memory, on the courage to remember not just where we're going, but also who and what got us here. And quite honestly, I see that as a common thread shared in my indigenous roots. There's another book that I'm reading, and I would totally um, encourage you all to take some time to read excerpts from, or if you've got the opportunity to read the full book. Braiding Sweetgrass. Maybe you can't see that all the way. This is what this art looks like. Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants from Robin Wall Kimmerer. And Robin, there's a portion in this book that she writes, and she says, in some native languages, the term for plants translates to those who take care of us. Think about that for a second. In some native languages, the term for plants translates to those who take care of us. And I remember when the first time reading that, it does stop me upon reflection each time. She doesn't say, or she doesn't mention that native language. The term for plants translate to resources. It doesn't translate to resources. It doesn't translate to natural capital, or it doesn't translate to commodities, but caretakers, kin. And it makes me think about the way that we talk about the ocean too, because yeah, words do matter. Um, it makes me think about the way we talk about the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf or your watersheds. So often, in policy spaces, economic spaces, or scientific spaces, we describe bodies of water in terms of extraction, fishing, drilling, shipping. What if we had this opportunity um, to just ask ourselves instead, how does the ocean take care of us? And for many folks with scientific background in the marine space, you know exactly what that might look like. But also, the Gulf feeds us, like quite literally, but also spiritually. It holds the bones of our ancestors, the songs of our childhoods, the silence we return to when the world is just too loud. And if it takes care of us, what does it mean for us to return that favor? And in braiding sweetgrass, Robin calls this the honorable harvest, the act of taking only what we need, giving thanks, and ensuring that what you take regenerates. And it's a concept that's rooted in reciprocity, not in domination. What would it look like to apply that to policy? What would it look like for us to apply that to our science, to conservation, to climate justice? And when I think about what the Gulf needs right now, it's not just data, although it is really important. Let's keep on collecting data. And universe permitting that we continue to have our studies and data funded. And it's not just about cleanups. It's a reorientation around respect for our land and our water. And we can't do that without listening to the stories of our peers, of our friends, of our families, of our kin, of our caretakers repeatedly, deeply, lovingly. It's 2025, year 2025, April 22nd, Earth Day. Quite honestly, Earth Day isn't just about optics anymore. It can't be. It's about obligation to each other. And I encourage you to find some courage. And today, again, thank you all for joining us. I invite you to support organizations like Black and Marine Science, like Heirs to Our Ocean, or my baby, the Gulf of Mexico Youth Climate Summit, to support youth from the Gulf to follow and listen, really listen, to comprehend frontline organizers. And I know sometimes signing petitions feels a little daunting or overwhelming, or what is this going to actually do? Sign those petitions, y'all. Share the data, y'all, and donate really where it matters, and protect your communities. Continue to right on to you. If this is work that you're already doing, thank you. Your ancestors see you, they hear you, they hold you, they love you. Protect your watersheds like protect your watersheds like grandma's recipes, because yes, it is that sacred. Um, we've covered quite a bit in this hour. Thank you for taking some time with me. I began at the shoreline, my shoreline in the Gulf of Mexico in Corpus Christi, Texas, which I had mentioned was a place of beauty and burden, a home and some harm. And we moved through some of my memories of my father, who taught me how to notice, of my grandmother, mi abuela, who taught me how to endure, of the leaders that we've lost, whose names we now carry into every room with us and every room we enter. We spoke about some youth who are standing up in all across the Gulf of Mexico that need your support in Mississippi, Louisiana, Cuba, Mexico, Matamoros, etc. And youth in Texas that are reshaping the future of our waters and our communities. I was also able to reflect on some damage, also the poetry of healing, the power of asking, what does it mean to take care of what takes care of us? And now, as we close, I return to the metaphor that's been with us all along, across generations, that sometimes connects us as we visit the beaches and bays, a metaphor that's been with us all along. And it goes like this: salt preserves, salt stings, it stings. Salt floats us when we're too tired to swim. Salt is in our stories, it's in our sweat, it's in our survival. I don't speak to you today because I have all the answers. Certainly, no one has all the answers. I speak because, well, darn, I know I carry the questions of a generation that refuses to sink. I speak because I believe our communities and our coastlines deserve to be seen, deserve to be heard and protected. I speak because the ocean is listening as it always has. And in the spirit of Mama Maya Angelou, let's rise. Let's rise in memory. Let's rise in action. Let's rise together. Thank you to Black and Marine Science for the space, for believing that our voices matter, that we can hold each other up. Thank you for everyone tuning in now or later on, for holding this hour with care and intention with me and the other hours and the hours to come. My name is Armon Alex. I'm honored to have shared my salt, my soil, and my story with you today. And I'll toss it back over to Rolinda. I'm happy to open the space for any questions if we've got time for it.
Awesome. I give a big BIMS round of applause. Thank you so much for just filling in the space at this hour. The story has been absolutely magnificent. It's incredible. The work that you're doing, the love that you have for the people, the ocean, and the land. I encourage you to just continue to keep sowing these seeds of beauty and resilience and hope for your community and beyond. Your share was deeply felt by myself, and I'm sure that you've reached so many within our audience. And as Armand has opened the floor, if anyone has any questions, any comments, anything to share, we would love to hear from you all. I see here in the YouTube chat that someone mentioned that poem was absolutely great. And they're sending their gratitude for your poetry.
Thank you.
Why do you believe people make a difference?
Someone says, Carlene says, thank you. Thanks for helping to preserve the knowledge of all people. Yes, indeed.
Absolutely.
There's a rest of those there. But I think
someone mentioned the book Black Nature, 4 Centuries of African American Nature Poetry.
Ooh, all right. Let me go ahead and write that down. You said Black Nature.
Yep, Black Nature. And
I'll
I
add
was
it to.
assuming that was by the same author as Sowing Sweetgrass.
Oh yeah, Robin Kimmerer. All right. Black Nature.
Yes, awesome. Any other questions? We are down to our last 5 minutes of the session. We greatly appreciate everyone who's been connecting, who's been really seeing the vision, who's been able to take the time to donate to our programs and our efforts, and the collective nature of what BIMS is doing to not just reach few but many at a time. Thank you all so much. It's deeply needed, especially, I will just vibrate this message back, especially during a time. Okay, baby, in a few, especially during a time when it's prominent. It's like we're reliving past events where, we all we really truly have is to rely on one another. And so this is key, because we can't forget that at the end of the day. I remember Sister Yaya came on here, and she said it the best. The resiliency and the reliance is within the people, not truly the government entities, or the bondage that already was created from the state and put onto us, but the answer is going to lie within each other, within the economical cooperation within between one another. So we thank you again. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for clicking that donate button today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being in attendance. And I'm just going to ask Armon, just as we kind of wrap up the last 5 minutes, 4 minutes, is there anything, any reflections that you would like to share? Anything that you would like to just, leave with the people? One last beautiful seed.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, let's just be real. There's just so much going on right now. And whether it's through our ability to be able to connect so flawlessly on online or through work or through our communities, yes, there's a lot going on, but I encourage you to also observe the joys, the celebrations, the happy parts, the pieces that remind us of why it matters to wake up every day, why he gives us an opportunity to breathe and to open our eyes and to love, to feel grieved, to hold hands, to hug. Because especially in moments like this you had mentioned, we have to hold on to each other, and not just hold on to each other, but we have to share our stories. Our ability to be able to open our mouths or to write, such a blessing. And quite honestly, it is our piece of resistance. So whether it is from Corpus Christi to Louisiana to Belize to Mexico to Cuba, Russia, anywhere across the world, encourage each other to look in these beautiful moments, to share those stories, to check on one another. Please do your mental health care routines if you've got them. If you don't, ask someone, ask a brother, ask a sister. We have to be able to hold each other in these times, because there is so much worth fighting for. And so on this Earth Day, take some time to remind yourself of why you do this work and tell others why you do this work. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but it is worth it. Angela Davis says, I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. We cannot accept pollution. We cannot accept injustice. We change those. And the only way we do that is to share each other's stories, amplify, support, organize as best as we can, and hold each other tight. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again.